Okay, so yes, so I don't need to convince you, I think, of the absolute necessity and the urgency to implement the European Green Deal to safeguard life on our planet. And I'm very sure that you are all quite familiar with the 11 dimensions of the European Green Deal that you can see here on the screen. Next slide. Um, One important aspect of the Green Deal is the transition towards a circular economy and to new ways of producing and consuming resources by moving away from fossil and mineral resources to fossil-free materials and to less damaging waste. That's actually one of the pillars of the Green Deal. Next, in my department, we don't work with the technicalities, let's say, of the Green Deal or the environmental aspects of the Green Deal directly, but we work with member states and regions of the European Union to manage a part of the EU budget that is dedicated to regional development under the heading of cohesion policy. Next. Cohesion policy is a very important part of the EU budget. It represents a third of the resources that are available to the European Union for its general project. And the work we do here with this policy and this funding is to build strong partnerships across the European Union to spend effectively nearly 400 billion euro in the financial perspectives 2021-2027. The EU budget, you might know, is spent in cycles that we call financial periods, and the next one has just started. We are working very hard at the moment to prepare the spending plans. So how do we do this? Well, we engage with member states and with regions to develop programs that are organized either nationally or regionally, depending on the administrative setup of the different member states. And these programs are based on a menu of 5 priorities that are used to decrease socioeconomic disparities and to also, of course, implement important policies of the Union, such as the Green Deal. The menu is here on the slide. You can see we have, of course, first of all, a smart dimension, developing competitiveness and innovation. We have a green menu, which is about, of course, the transition towards low carbon economy and to increase the resilience of Europe. We have a connected menu for transportation and digital connectivity. Then we have a social dimension where we try to build more equality and inclusiveness across Europe. And then we have one called A Europe Closer to Citizens, which is all about territorial development, about anchoring actions into territories such as cities, rural areas, or in my case, cross-border areas. So this is a little bit how it all happens. And then I want to zoom in with the next slide on the second item on the menu, which is called A Greener Europe. And with this particular objective, we finance, and European cohesion policy finances, a large number of actions that all go into the direction of meeting the Green Deal objectives. So for you, I would say, working on bioeconomy, the most appropriate priority would be the one dedicated to green transition. And here in particular, point number 6, about promoting the transition to a circular and resource-efficient economy. So you can see clearly that it is the intention of the Commission to support projects, strategies that will allow regions and member states to move towards this circular economy and to transition effectively. Then on delivering the European Green Deal, which is in my next slide, although it's a priority of now, of course, it's already been on the cards for a number of years. And in the financial perspective or the financial period, which is ending right now, we have already made sure that at least 20% of the budget was spent on climate mainstreaming, as we call it. So different actions, horizontal actions that are, or investments, sorry, that are made in favor of climate change. And we also make sure that the funds are spent with a proper legal environment. We want to make sure that the money is not spent in a vacuum and that the legal framework of the member states or the regions is actually in line with the Green Deal. And for this period, which has just started, we have higher targets. We have fixed minimum targets to be spent on Green Deal actions. We continue to work with member states to ensure that they have an adequate legal framework in favor of the Green Deal. And this particular aspect of our work is done very much hand in hand with our colleagues in DG Environment. Climate proofing, for instance, is an obligatory dimension in any new infrastructure investment that is being made with cohesion funding. Then, next slide. DG REGIO is the DG of the territories and of the regions. And what we really want to do is to work with individual regions. Why? Because we are very aware that not all regions start from the same situation. There are very different starting points, if you want, in terms of transitioning to a green economy and a carbon-free economy. So we work with the regions to define their visions, their needs, their strategies, and this is then translated into these cohesion policy programs that I mentioned earlier. We strongly believe that the right green transition governance must be in place for the investments to be effective. We also know that innovation has a central role to play, and this is particularly true, I would say, of the bioeconomy. All regions of the EU are strongly encouraged to formulate bioeconomy strategies and to invest in innovation and upscaling of products and services. And this process can be supported by financial contributions from cohesion policy. And then I cannot, of course, conclude this short presentation by not mentioning cooperation across borders. In the next slide, you will see that we also have a type of funding which goes to cross-border cooperation or to what we call transnational cooperation, where member states and regions belonging to larger spaces or sea basins can work with each other. Also, in that particular context, we have programs, and those programs use the same menu as the one that I mentioned earlier. So the Interreg programs really are used to make us stronger, I would say, because we can always learn from each other. we are always stronger when we cooperate. We are weaker when we stay all in our little corner or on our little islands without linking up with others. And in the context of Interreg, it is possible, again, to receive financial support to define strategies or to directly invest in research, innovation, and production capacity. There is a lot to be gained for regions by working with each other, maybe when they have a similar profile or complementary, actually, strength that can be used to have greater impact. And I would also want to highlight the importance of youth. You might ask me, why do you talk about youth when you come from cohesion policy? Well, because this year is the European Year of Youth. There will be a lot of emphasis put on how the young generation has a fundamental and crucial role to play in the European project, of course, as a whole, but in particular when it comes to the transition to a green society. Young people are mobilized on these themes, and we want to make sure that they are part of this process, not as a little token, but really very involved in deciding, shaping our green future. And then finally, to conclude, a couple of good practices from the past, if we can move on, yes, directly to the next one. I wanted to show you an example of a bioeconomy project that was financed by cohesion policy in the Centro region of Portugal, where here the project financed, let's say, the cycle from research, innovation, all the way to production of fuel from bioresources emanating from forestry and farming waste. So here you can see that the support from cohesion policy is not just for framework conditions, but it's going into very specific individual projects as well. And the next one is an example I took from the Interreg programs, and in this particular case, a program that covers the Alpine space. The Alpine mountain range is shared between different countries, and we have a program for these countries to work with each other. And in this particular project here, bio-based value chains were developed in five regions, but on 4 different topics: on wood, agriculture, on food packaging, and on chemistry. And this was a lower value project with no direct investment in infrastructure, but a lot of investments in learning from each other, in doing this together for more effective bio-based value chains in the Alpine context. And then one last example, but it's a bit less maybe directly relevant for you, but it's to show you the variety of investments that are possible under cohesion policy. And here was a project on recycling old cotton and turning that into new fibers, and again investing into the innovation side of things, but very much in this case in the commercialization of the technology, and as I said before, upscaling sustainable products. This was a project financed in Finland. Voilà, so for me, it concludes a little bit what I wanted to share with you on the role of cohesion policy, of regional policy in moving towards a greener economy, and in particular, financing possibilities, options, innovations in bioeconomy. Thank you very much.